of suspicion and because of okay.
Was a good place for scorpions.
How do you define ruin?
So ruin,
ruin?
a ruin is a building that is no longer inhabited, basically.
Yeah.
A derelict building like they used to have in the South Bronx all the time.
The reason they call it ruin because in those days, a building that wasn't whatever, it was eventually falling.
Yeah.
The walls were caving in and.
Yep. Okay. So let us continue.
That's why they call it a ruin.
Okay. So where we are up to this discussion of the four mishmarot. Until now, we were doing Rabbi Eliezer holds that the night has 3 watches. Now we're going to have
watches.
In other words, the night is divided into 3 watches of 4 hours each.
4 hours each. And now here's
Now Tana Rabbanan, we learned in the Braita, which is in the Tosefta, actually in Sanhedrin. Tana Rabbanan, I'm sorry, in the Tosefta of the first chapter of Brachot. Arba Mishmarot Havi Laila. Whenever this is just a general, whenever it says Tana Rabbanan, it's usually a Braita from the official collections of Braita, and which you find in the back of the Gemara. And if you if it says Tanya, that means it's a general Braita that could have been quoted by anyone. So Tana Rabbanan Arba Mishmarot Havi Laila. There are 4 watches to the night. These are the words of Rabbi Nassan. So 4 watches of 3 hours each. Rabbi Nassan says there's 3. My time of the Rabbi Nassan. What is Rabbi Nassan's logic? He says he has a proof from the book of Shoftim.
Wait a minute. He just said 4.
No, that's the Matana. These are the words of Rebbe. Oh. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says there's 3. Rabbi Natan says there's 4. Rabbi Natan says there's 3. Now, where does Rabbi Natan bring a proof? He brings proof from the story of Gideon. So if you remember, Gideon snuck up on the Midianite camp, and they had a dream about a barley cake knocking the camp over. And he saw that as a sign that Hashem is going to give him victory over the Midianites. It's very interesting. I know a few people named Gideon, and they're all very tall and broad. they're all very big, strong people.
I knew Gideon.
It's written, Vayovel Gideon umeya ish asher ito, and Gideon and 100 men with him came b'ktzei machana to the edge of the Midianite camp, Rosha Shmurot HaTichona, at the beginning of the middle watch.
So the only way you can have a middle
very good is if you have 3.
You have 3.
Tona ain't Tichona, and we learned in a Braita what is the meaning of Tichona? L'shiesh lefanel la'achreya. By definition, Tichona means a middle you have before and after, right? Like the Mizrach HaTichon, the Middle East, because there's a Western East and an Eastern East. Okay, right? Rebbe says, my Tichona, what does it mean? The middle, Echad min HaTichona shebetichona. One of the 2 middle ones. If you have 4, you got 2 middle ones. Rabbi Natan Miksiv Tichona shebetichona. It doesn't say the middle of the middle ones. In other words, according to Rebbe, it was between watch number 2 and watch number 3, in the middle of the middle. Says Rabbi Natan, the Torah doesn't say, the Tanakh doesn't say Tichona shebetichonot. It says Tichona. My time under Rebbe. So if so, since Rebbe has to, shall we say, go away from the plain meaning of the text in Shoftim, what is Rebbe's compelling reason to say this for? Omer Rabbi Zreika, Omer Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, or Rebbe Zreika. These are all rabbis of the Jerusalem Talmud. So they're all rabbis.
Wait a minute. With Gideon, he's talking about, what is he talking about? Kohanim?
No, it's just Shoftim. What Shmuel wrote. He's telling us the story that it was at the middle watch. It was at the beginning of the middle watch, which is like 11 o'clock at night, like 10 o'clock at night, deep in the night.
No, but everybody assumes that he's talking about Kohanim.
No. We're just talking about Mishmarot. In other words, in the ancient world, the night was divided into Mishmarot.
Oh, that's yeah.
So the Tanakh is telling us that the way the Jews told time, right? Because Shmuel is writing the book of Shoftim for us. The way they tell time is there's a middle watch.
Because don't forget, they were watchers on the walls.
Yeah, right. But this is before the Beit HaMikdash was built. My time of the Rebbe. So what's Rebbe's logic? So Rebbe Zeriko, who's a rabbi of the Jerusalem Talmud, said in the name of Rabbi Yami, said in the name of Yeshua ben Levi, who was a Tana. Ketiv Echad Omer, one Katuv Echad Omer, one pasuk says, Chatzot Laila, Kum Lahodot Lakomish B'Teit Tzedakah. At midnight I shall arise to praise you on your righteous judgment. It's Tilim Kuf Yotet. David HaMelech is praising the Torah, chapter 119 in Tilim, the longest chapter in the Bible. Because of Echad, and another verse says, Kidmu Einai Ashmurot. My eyes have arisen at the Ashmurot. My eyes have arisen at the watches.
Proceeded.
Okay, so how is my eyes proceeded? Okay. Well, Kidmu means literally my eyes proceeded, which means my eyes I get up. Kidmuena means that my eyes get up before the watch. Okay, so Arba Mashmarot Havi. How can you get up at the watches? Because if there's 4, midnight is smack between watch number 2 and watch number 3. Rabbi Nosson Savalok, Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Nosson holds like Rabbi Yeshua. It's not Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua says that Shalosh shows that you can read the Shema until 3 hours in the day. Shekain derech malachim lamei b'shalosh because kings get up 3 hours in the day. Shis delayla b'tarti l'mama havile shtei mishmaro. The 6 of the night and the 3 of the morning is 2 mishmarot. In other words, 9 hours is 2 mishmarot. Rabbi Yashi Yama Mishmares Upalganami Mishmares called
9 hours.
So here's like this. David says, Kidmu Einai Ashmurot. I have arisen, before my Kidmu Einai, my eyes proceed. They've arisen before Mishmarot. In other words, 2 Mishmarot before kings get up. When does a typical king get up? 9 a.m. So that's 3 hours of the day and plus 6 hours of the night, right? So I'm sorry, get up at the beginning of the 3rd hour at 8 a.m. So that's
I don't understand this.
Anyways,
every king was getting up and going to sleep.
Generally speaking, kings get up at 8 a.m. So you have 6 hours of the night. So David HaMelech got up 8 hours before your typical king. Your typical king gets up at 8 a.m. And David HaMelech got up at midnight. That's 8 hours.
Exactly.
So he says, one second. He says, I got up 2 mishmarot before all the other kings, which makes each mishmar 3 hours because.
You mean that was happening on a regular basis?
Yeah. We're going to learn about that later.
He used to play the instrument.
No, the harp played at midnight and woke him up. We'll get there. The harp played itself. We'll see in a moment.
Oh, with the wind.
Right, yeah, we're going to learn about that. We're going to learn about that's coming up soon in this Gemara. That whole story also is from this Gemara. But the point is that if Ashmurot, that if he gets up 2 Ashmurot before the kings, and the kings don't get up to 2 hours in the day, 2 Ashmurot have to be 6 hours, plus another 2 hours in the day. So it follows an Ashmura is 3 hours, and that's why Rebbe says there's 4 Ashmurot. Ravashi Mishmaro Palganam Mishmaro Korah. Ravashi says 1.5 Mishmarot is also called a Mishmar, so it could still be 3 Mishmarot. So the night could be 4 or 3, and we have an unresolved answer. This has very little halachic bearing except for one thing, dealing with a custom. It is customary to begin slichot at midnight. Midnight, because we have daylight savings time, is usually around 1 a.m. in September when we begin, or August this year, when we begin saying slichot. So when Rabbi Davis was here, he told me the whole story. He discovered that it was very hard to get people to show up at midnight. And therefore, he found a source that says that you can do it from the beginning of the second mishmar, assuming the night is 3 mishmarot, which is about 10:30, 11. If the sun sets nominally at 7, right? So another 3 hours is 10, and another, so like between 10 and 11, basically.
Well, what about the custom of getting up at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock for?
That's after the first night. The first night you do it at midnight.
I know, but
well, right. So we just get up a little bit earlier. We get up at 6:30 instead of 7. We start at 6:30 instead of 7 slichot.
No, I know, but I'm just saying. You just said 12 o'clock, and that people didn't show, so they make it 10:30, which is still the custom, only for the first one.
Right.
Why?
No, because normally you do it in the morning. It's just you do it midnight, the first one. So since people won't show up midnight, we do it.
I'm saying, where did that custom come that the first one is
midnight? I'll tell you why. Because really, you're not supposed to say Tachanun on Matzoi Shabbat until midnight. So the earliest possible time to say Slichot is midnight. Really, halachically.
The earliest.
Right. And therefore, since we want to show our eagerness to do Slichot, we do it at the first possible moment on the first night. But we take a leniency and we say Tachanun even at 11 o'clock because the people won't show up at 1 a.m. Okay. By the way, Young Israel in West Hartford, they do Slichot at night after Ma'ariv the whole week because they can't get people to come in the morning.
So here's an example.
Well, we're made of tougher stuff.
Does change.
No, these are all customs. It's not halacha. This is not a big deal. It's just customs.
That's not halachic?
No, it's a custom. The whole Slichot is a custom. In other words, it's not a halacha found in the Talmud. When I say you should do it, but it's a custom minhag. Okay, so now let's learn a little bit more. Now,
where are we?
Amar Rabbi Zreika, Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Since we already quoted something, the Rabbi Zreika said in the name of Rabbi Yami, said in the name of Yeshua ben Levi. We're going to quote a completely different, irrelevant thing, completely different topic that Rabbi Yami said in the name of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Rabbi Zreika said in the Rabbi. So Amar Rabbi Zreika, because that happens because when in the Beit Medrash they were discussing a certain chain of sayings, they would add. So Rabbi Zreika said in the name of Rabbi Yami, this name of Yeshua ben Levi, in front of a dead person at a funeral or when there's a dead person in the room.
Yeah.
You only say matters pertaining to the dead person. You don't talk about anything else.
And it only shvach?
No, just you only talk. You only talk about things related to this mate. No, just what to do, the Torah, and so on. You don't discuss anything else. This is only said with regards to words of Torah, that you don't say words of Torah in the presence of a mate, except for halachot related to the mate, immediately to the dead person. But worldly matters, there's no problem. That even words of Torah you should not say, and all the more so worldly matters. So you don't talk about your stock portfolio when there's a dead person, out of respect for the dead person. Why do we mention this? Because it's the same chain. Rabbi Zreika in the name of Rabbi Yama, the name of Yeshua ben Levi. Now we want to know when David HaMelech actually got up in the morning. Ask the Gemara of David B'Palga D'Leila Havikoi. Did David then get up at midnight? Me'orta Havikoi. He was already up from the night before. He stayed up all night. The Ksiv, as it says, Kedamti b'neshef v'shavei. I shall precede you. I have gotten up early in the evening and I have been saved. How do you know neshef orto? How do you know neshef means night? Because it's written b'neshef be'erev in Mishlei in the evening of neshef in the darkness of night.
It's interesting that this word is now popular in Israel.
Right.
always deals with some simcha or something.
Right. Amar Rabbi Yishael, Amar Rav Achi Kamar David. Mi olam lo over alai chatzi naila b'shina. When it says that I get up at night, it means to say I never let the night pass me by, midnight pass me by sleeping. Rabbi Zera says more about David HaMelech. Had katzot alayla till midnight. Misnadnei miskasus. He napped like a horse. A horse sleeps for a few minutes, wakes up, snorts, goes back to sleep. A horse doesn't sleep consistently.
So does a dog.
But okay. And from midnight he would arise like a lion. Ravashi Yomar Chatzos Laila Osik Divrei Torah. Till midnight he would involve himself in words of Torah. And from there on he would praise Hashem. He would compose the Tillim or sing the Tillim. Ask the Gemara of the Neshef or Tohu. Is Neshef then meaning night? Ha Neshef Tzafra. Neshef means morning, as it's written. Vayakem David, by David HaMelech himself. It says that David smote them, Me'an Neshef Adera, from morning till night, L'machrosam till the next day. My love, Mitzafra Vadlaila, that David smote them from morning to evening. Lo, Ma'orta Vadorta, from night to night. It should written from Neshef till Neshef, or Erev till Erev. Neshef means twilight. And there's two Neshefs, Neshef Laila, the Osiyamama. The night is blown away, is pushed away and comes morning. Neshef Yamama Vasi Laila, the day is pushed away and comes night. So Neshef means the transition. Neshef means twilight. And indeed, in rabbinic Hebrew, Neshef means twilight because of this Gemara. Neshef is a description of twilight. In other words, Neshef is the time from the first light of dawn till sunrise, and Neshef is also the time. And indeed, twilight in English usage, twilight means both morning and evening. There's a morning twilight and an evening twilight.
That's true.
So when we say that David gets up in Neshef, right? He says Neshef. It means to say that I never let I am always awake by the time it begins to be light. Okay. So now we have a problem with the absence of clocks. We have 3 more minutes. With the absence of clocks, how did David know when it was midnight? The David how did David know when midnight was? Even Moshe Rabbeinu didn't know it was midnight.
Oh.
He told Paro Kachatzos Alayla around midnight because Moshe couldn't, since he knew Hashem told him midnight, but because Moshe couldn't know exactly what midnight was and Paro couldn't know exactly what midnight was, he didn't want to say exactly at midnight. He said around midnight. So no one should think that God was off. I'm going out into Egypt. My chatzos, would then HaKadosh Baruch Hu say about midnight, because there are any doubts before heaven? Hashem told him at midnight, and he said around midnight.
No, lemachar.
Right. Well, it's not in the original Gemara.
Where did he get that? Lemachar.
It's a variant reading of the Gemara. But he tells him the next day at midnight, and Moshe came and said around midnight because he wasn't sure. But David have a yodas. If Moshe couldn't tell you exactly when midnight was, how did David know? Because he didn't have a quartz watch. David Simona Havalei. David had a sign. Tomer Bacha Babis the name of Shimon Chasida. Kinor. There was a harp hanging above his bed. And when midnight came, the north wind came and blew it, and it would sing, and he would get up. It was his alarm clock. Now, an interesting thing. So what's the north wind? Apparently, it comes from the mountains to the north of Yerushalayim. In other words, by day you have a sea breeze, right?
But Yerushalayim, where the palaces was already on the mountain.
Yeah, but there are other hills to the north.
Even higher?
Right. In other words, you have a land breeze that comes from the desert, from the northeast, from the Syrian desert, and by day you have a sea breeze coming from the Mediterranean. Because what happens is by day, so there's a reason, I forget why, but by day you have a sea breeze and by night you have a land breeze.
Israel, by the way, already had their first rain.
Well, Zayin Cheshvan, you see, they're doing the right thing. So Hashem is sending them rain. It
was really raining some places.
That's great.
Near Kinneret.
How's the Kinneret doing? That's the measure.
Kinneret was raining.
Is it above the red line?
I don't think it was yet, but it was very close.
Yeah. Well, Israel has a lot of desalination plants. It doesn't want to rely on the Kinneret.
So maybe that's why it's rising, because then it's not used as much as they used to.
No, but the desalination water is more expensive. The Kinneret water is cheaper for the farmers, so they use it when they can. At any rate, what's really interesting, this is what I understand. What's really fascinating is that the breeze does change. So I was in Death Valley once. I go in the winter. When I used to go to California to big, I used to stop. The different national parks. I always take an extra few days to go camping.
Really?
So I was sleeping.
By yourself?
Yeah. I don't schlep my family with me when I go lecturing. So I'll show you pictures. So I lay down, and it was still warm because it's, even in the winter, it's warm there. And then at midnight, I'm woken up because the wind changed and a cool breeze came and blew in right through the opening of the tent and woke me up, exactly like by David HaMelech, because the Southern California has a very similar climate to Israel. Anyways.
Can I interrupt you for just half a minute?
Yes.
The fire alarm inspection people are here. So there's one point where the fire alarm will probably go off.
And we shouldn't worry.
So just let you know, don't jump up and run out of the
panic.
building.
And I won't grab the extinguisher or anything
Right.
like that. Okay.
Just warning you guys.
Thank you, Joe.
Yep.
And just to an example, so Motzei Shabbos, my grandson, which by the way,
Okay, so
celebrated
we're
his-
not going to go any further in the Talmud, so we're going to conclude here. Let me just, okay.